and I'm Brad Beater with All About Tours, area sales manager, actually up in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. It is a spectacular today. We're about 90 degrees, and we're always very happy about that. And I've also got our product manager on the line with us, Bob Borden, known as Bula Bob, and he'll chip in with some of his expertise too. A couple of housekeeping things. Everybody is muted during the presentation. This presentation is recorded, and if you have any questions, please enter those during the presentation in your dashboard where it says questions. We'll answer those at the end of the presentation. Also, just one note, as I mentioned earlier, that it is being recorded, and you do get a follow-up email, and I believe, well, I do know this, that there are some links to videos and fact sheets and everything like that Sandy has provided. She'll probably mention that during her presentation, but I want to encourage everybody to check their email for those special addendums to the presentation. So with that said, I'm going to turn that over to the presentation over to Sandy. And Sandy, you should have the mouse.
Okay, I will just see if that's working, Brad, shall we? So kia ora, everybody. Welcome to a presentation on Time Unlimited Tours. My name is Sandy Riley, and I'm a very proud New Zealander based in Portland. I've been here in the States for a couple of years. This presentation is about a phenomenal tour operation that is based out of Auckland City, which is in the North Island, for anybody who's not familiar with New Zealand. They do private touring in both North and South Island, and we're going to discuss some of those touring options. I do like to share with you that when I came to live here in the States, I had the advantage of doing this tour myself, and I pretty much convinced the owners that they needed a rep and market here to be selling this product to all of you to help you understand what an amazing integrated Māori experience and cultural experience that your guests can have when visiting New Zealand, and the multiple options that this product offers. So I'm just going to, Brad, can we see if the mouse is going to work for me? Just going to put that down there. Oh, and it does. That's wonderful. So Time Unlimited Tours. It is an award-winning tour operation. As I mentioned, it is based out of Auckland, New Zealand. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what TIME stands for. TIME stands for To Integrate New Zealand Iconic Experiences, Our New Zealand, Our Way. As I mentioned, they are award-winning. TIME stands to Integrate Māori Experiences. So Māori culture is our native culture. It's something we're very, very proud of. And it's an integral part of who New Zealanders are. The co-founders of the company, they're a husband and wife team. Nell is there on the left-hand side, and he's very passionate about some of the guided walks in New Zealand. He comes from an Irish and German heritage, and so he speaks multiple languages, so our tours can be offered in both English, Māori, German, French, and Spanish. So you can request guides in all of those languages. Kaylee, the stunningly beautiful Māori woman on the right-hand side, Kaylee can trace her tangata whenua, her whānau, back as far as the original signing of the Treaty of Waitangi with the chiefs when sovereignty was first introduced into New Zealand. So she has a very, very lengthy history, and she's from one of the Northland tribes. So let's talk a little bit about what the values of this company is, because I think that's important to establish why you would want to use this company and what's so special about them. Manangi kikitanga is the idea that hospitality and kindness and generosity. So when you're in the travel and tourism industry, like we all are, it's very important to be able to ensure that your guests feel that they are part of the sharing of knowledge, that there's a respect from the cultures and communities that they come from, while they're viewing the beautiful islands of New Zealand. Kaiakitanga is the idea that we as a company and as a nation have a responsibility to guide international guests through through the country, and we're entrusted by Mother Nature to be respectful of the fauna and flora and our oceans. Poakitanga is the idea that you should always, in everything that you do it to the highest standard. And Koakitanga is the idea that if you have these core values, you unite people in solidarity. So some of the tours that Time Unlimited offers. We have a Auckland day tour. Now I'm a born New Zealander, and I lived in Auckland for close to 50 years prior to coming to the States. So it was my city, and I was so impressed with the day tour that they offer there. So I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But they also integrate a cultural experience if your guest specifically wants a Māori guide. But all of our guides are very familiar with New Zealand culture and Māori culture, so they integrate little pieces of that experience right throughout all of their tours. Now, New Zealand is known for its beautiful beaches and its stunning native forests. So we do offer guided wilderness walks through many of the iconic areas and great walks of New Zealand. We do shore excursions, and we'll touch on that in a little bit because there's multiple options there for you to consider. We also have private luxury tours, so pretty much all of the tours can be tailored for exactly what your client's interests are. Let's talk about the Auckland Day Tour first. So they offer a full and a half day tour. Now I want to share with you what my experience of doing the tour was. So, you know, this is my city, I think I know it well. Time Unlimited calls me the night before, Kaylee, and she confirms that the tour is going to take place, which is what we always try to do with our guests. They then turn up to pick me up in a beautiful Mercedes Vianao vehicle. So immediately I know that it's a quality product, that I'm going to get a great experience. And so when I hop into the vehicle, and it was a cold July day. It was very, very, very cold. So I hopped into the vehicle, and there was a lovely little mohair rug for me to keep me warm. Next to my seat, there was a basket full of kind of iconic New Zealand things. So there was some greenstone in there. There was some paua, or I think you would term it as abalone here. There was some New Zealand foods that I personally love, like jaffas, and there was a kiwi fruit, and a crisp gala apple juice as well, which was from the growing centre of Marlborough in New Zealand. So lots of little treats for me, and that was a nice surprise. The first thing we did was we drove to Auckland City has 5 volcanoes. So we drove to the top of Mount Eden, and we saw this beautiful picture of how the city was laid out. And you can see in this image now with the guest kind of showing what that experience would have been. Then we went down to the Winter Gardens and saw some of New Zealand's fauna and flora. We went along the waterfront. We went to Bastion Point, which has a traditional marae on it, and we got to view what a marae would look like. We then went over to Devonport, which is a colonial town or city, and we got to have a beautiful lunch there. And then in the afternoon, we went out to the Waitakere Centre, so we got to walk and view through the visitors centre there and walk through a traditional native forest in New Zealand. We saw New Zealand's second largest kauri tree, which is a native beautiful hardwood tree. And then we drove out to the beach of Piha, which is a black sand beach on the west coast, and we had a beautiful afternoon tea there. And I was delivered back to my home by about 5 o'clock in the evening. Now, if you think about that, your guest who's just arrived in a city, a large city, is going to get volcanoes, colonial village, a marae, get to walk through a native forest, get to experience a black sand west coast beach with a wonderful afternoon tea. And we don't openly advertise this, but every guest on Time Unlimited's day tour receives a little personalised gift as well. Now, those small group tours are limited to 15 people. So if you've got 2 travellers together, and the tour that I did, we had 2 couples from the United States. We had a young German girl who was just finishing her world trip, and her mother had booked her this tour. And I also had an Australian journalist on the tour as well. So this was a great day tour. So that's the basic tour that Time Unlimited offers. The next thing I mentioned was wilderness guided walks. So have a look at this beautiful sweep of beach. This is literally 25 minutes from central downtown Auckland. And you have these beautiful regional parks and coastal walks available. So you may have a guest who's actually wants to get out of the city and wants to do some tramping. And I know here in the Pacific Northwest, that's really, really popular. Oh, sorry, I said tramping. That's a New Zealand word. And I'm realizing that the connotations here are quite different. So please understand it means hiking. So your guests may want to do some hiking. And we do some of the wilderness walks. Shore excursions. So what seems to be very popular is taking a cruise for our North American guests, and they like to cruise the South Pacific. Now these cruise ships come into Auckland for a set period of time, and instead of them just wandering around downtown Auckland, we can do a private tour where we can pick them up, or do a small group tour if there's a group of them traveling together. We can pick them up from the ship. They may have interests in going out to some of the wine districts just out of Auckland, like Matakana or Kumeu. So we could spend a day touring them out at wineries in the region, and then take them back to the ship. Now, do think about shore excursions and a pre and post option. So your client is perhaps flying into Sydney. They're going to be on a cruise ship through the South Pacific. They're going to arrive into Auckland, perhaps tour around the ship, doing the coast of New Zealand, and then they're going to depart from Auckland back on one of the Los Angeles or Houston or San Francisco flights. We can pick them up from the boat. We can tour them for that day, personalizing an experience based on their interests. And then you can actually use Time Unlimited as the transfer to drop them off at the airport, because all of those flights leave late in the evening. So instead of wasting that day or paying for a day room for the day in Auckland City, we could actually organize a tour for them. If they've got, depending on how many hours they have, but if they get off the boat early enough, it's say 10 o'clock in the morning, and their flight isn't until 10 o'clock that night, we could even possibly take them on a day tour down to Hobbiton or Waitomo Caves. So there's lots of options available. The next thing to consider is some of the amazing private tours available. So we do 1 day, 1-way tours. Now, what that means is your guest may arrive into Auckland. We can do a private tour, picking them up from the airport, doing a traditional Māori greeting and welcome at the airport for them. And then we could take them down to Waitomo Caves, and perhaps they'd like to go to Rotorua, so we can take them to Rotorua on that same day, and we can deliver them to their hotel in Rotorua. And then they may want to spend a couple of days there prior to flying to Queenstown or somewhere else, perhaps doing the South Island. So 1 day, 1-way tours. We have lots of requests for multi-day tours. So an example of that would be, we can do an Auckland, Waitomo and Rotorua tour. And we've just included a farm stay in that experience. So your guest can have a 2 or a 3-day tour option. Again, please remember that our vehicles are Mercedes vehicles. Our largest vehicle will take up to 19 guests, but they can request just a small SUV style, and we can private tour them that way. So they may want to do the Coromandel, for example. I'll give you an example of some of the tours that we've recently had. So we had a couple that arrived into Auckland, and we did a day tour with them of Auckland City. The following day we picked them up and we did Waitomo Caves and Rotorua, and then down to Napier. They wanted to spend a few days in Napier around the wine districts there, so we left them there for a couple of days, and our guide came back. They then flew to Hastings, which is not far from Napier. Our client, our guide, picked them up from Napier, and they toured back up the central North Island, swinging out to the Coromandel coast and going to Cathedral Cove and Hotwater Beach. So that was a 3-day tour to deliver them back to Auckland. So lots of multi-tour options There's a picture of New Zealand for anybody who's not familiar, both the North and the South Island. So I've listed there some of the destinations that we find are very popular with our guests. Obviously the Bay of Islands, so this is about a 3.5 to 4 hour drive from Auckland City, and we can do a 2-day, it's a minimum 2-day tour up to the Bay of Islands. The 3-day tour actually involves going to Waitangi, going behind the scenes of the marae and the treaty house there. And we can even include, because Kaylee is from the tribes of Northland, we can even include a stay at a marae if somebody was interested in that. But there's lots of things to do in the Bay of Islands. There's game fishing, there's fantastic snorkeling and scuba diving. I've done a dolphin, swim with the dolphins experience up there. Just beautiful, beautiful beaches. We do a tour called the Stars of Matariki. Now, in Maori legend, we believe that when your spirit leaves your body, it actually travels up the whole of the centre of Aotearoa, which is the Maori word for New Zealand, and it departs at the very, very most northern tip of Cape Reinga into the next life. So we do a ceremony, a dawn ceremony there, which is really beautiful. So there's lots of different experiences. We do a tour of the Hobbiton movie set. Wellington is another very, very cool city. We have Te Papa down there. And the many parts of Wellington, because that's where our capital is, where the beehive is, our government. There's lots of fantastic things to do in that city. I've got listed here Able Tasman. So we work in with a company called Canterbury Trails in the South Island. It's a little bit of a partner company. It's owner operated like we are. But if our client is doing a tour through New Zealand and they want to stay with the same guide, we will fly our guide or take the vehicles with them to do the South Island as well. So really it's only limited by budget and imagination. Many of our North American guests are time poor, meaning that they've perhaps set only a week to see the whole of New Zealand. And this is where I think private touring is a great option, because it takes all of the stress out of them having to get to airports, having to drive themselves. Please remember, we do drive on the other side of the road to what you do here. And if they've got a limited time frame, private touring is a great way for them to see exactly what they want to see in the amount of days that they have to experience New Zealand. Now we do, as I mentioned, Nell always likes me to and show you the vehicles and show the quality of the vehicles and the various different options. So as I did mention, they are all luxury vehicles. These are some of our new tours that I just wanted to discuss with you on the private touring option. So I've got the Waitomo Caves, which are the beautiful glowworm caves, and I think they featured in Lord of the Rings as well. Hobbiton is obviously becoming very, very popular. I would recommend that if your guests are interested in doing the Hobbiton experience, either the day tour or they do an evening banquet 4 nights a week during high season, please make sure that they book well in advance for that. The Coromandel Peninsula is absolutely stunning. Just sugar-coated white sandy beaches, stretches of beautiful coastline. Cathedral Cove is there and it's just amazing. Matakana is one of my favourite places to go out of Auckland. It's about a 35, probably 40-minute drive from Auckland City, and it's very much a farm to table area. So there's wineries and beautiful farmers market, pottery, and again it's set on the coast of the North Island. So we mentioned our multi-day and our one-way tours, and the other thing that I just wanted to reinforce with you is that we can do both North and South Island touring as well.